Warning, this podcast has stories of real-life events and true crime that happens every day. These stories may contain adult language and graphic or disturbing details not suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
132 in Bush, I've got him at gunpoint. Check the left phone for calling a full evacuation on this side. They're pulling them out.
1011, advise ready for camp.
Welcome to another episode of War Stories. I'm Tom.
And I'm Chuck.
And this feels like deja vu, and that's an inside joke. But Chuck and Mark were holding it down for a two-parter the last two episodes.
Like
how was that? It is deja vu, right?
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So we did it. It went well. Man, I feel like I'm telling you this for the second time again.
I know, weird, huh?
No, it went really well. We have a good banter, a good rapport back and forth. So it was pretty painless. I mean, the first one, Marco was getting his bearings. And then once we really, he got his bearings, he understood how it was going. And then we were able to come back with the guest again. I think that just allowed him to open up a lot more. And he was asking questions. He was firing off left and right. And it was really good. And it felt really comfortable. And it felt good. Yeah.
Well, as we integrate the two shows, and we talked about that, for a while, and how that was going to happen, and we've worked it out logistically. I think having Marco on some of the War Stories episodes has really been a unique thing to have him bring, the perspective. Yeah. Because we take for granted all the cop shit and all the military shit and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's for those of you who don't know or don't follow Locker Room Live is. Marco and I have known each other since we were like 14. Marco was fresh off the boat from Venezuela, and I was his first friend. So he brings that civilian perspective. He was the guy that all through my police career was like, motherfucker, I knew you win. Right? Like, don't try to. So, but this week, we have a crossover episode. We have another podcast here with us. So welcome to the show, Sgt Erik Lavigne, the founder of Two Cops, One Donut. How's it going, man?
Doing great, sir. How are you?
Oh, don't call me sir, man. I'm retired now. I used to say I work for a living, and I still work for a living, but I'm retired.
Nice.
Two jobs, right? Get that.
I get it
from the city, and so my dad worked. It's funny. My dad worked for LAPD for 25 years. He said that at roll call, they'd read the names of the guys who'd passed away, and then they'd read the year they retired. And then they'd obviously know the year they passed. And if the year they retired, their dates of service were shorter than the amount of time they were retired, so they were retired longer than they were working, they'd get a standing ovation for taking more money from the city than they put in.
I like it.
Oh, nice.
I like it. That's a good standard to have.
So Chuck, tell you and producer Dylan put this together. This is super fun. My wife was actually the one who told me a while back when you guys, because you guys have been on for a while now, right?
Yeah, we're going on 4 years.
Yeah,
basically, it got kicked off because of COVID.
What's funny is that's nice. Our story. We had farted around with a couple of things, and then we started just before COVID, and then that kind of stalled everything for a little bit. I ended up moving away, and so we couldn't do things in person. We had to find an entirely new way to do this show. And so this is, it's kind of over the last year and a half, it's been a relaunch, rebranding kind of a thing. So I get that, man. We've been doing this for 4 years too, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing it for 4 years, and I think it was on a little bit prior.
A year before. Yeah, we'd been doing it for a year before. So 5 years. Yeah. Okay. So tell us about your show. I mean, I know, but tell the listeners.
Okay. So first, I'm Erik Lavigne. I've been in law enforcement 18 years. Also, an Air Force cop. I'm still in. I know I look old as shit. Oh, can you swear on your podcast, by the way?
You can say whatever the fuck you want.
Okay, lovely. So I'm still in. I did active duty 06 to 2010 as security forces. I like to tell people I'm SF and just watch the reaction. When you really, the joke is, guys, if you're not familiar with security forces at the Air Force Base, we're the guys that take your ID at the gate. And we're like, thank you for coming through the gates of Lackland. Salute, and you're on your way.
PMO.
Yeah, we don't do anything significant. We are not special forces, I promise you. So, so did that 06, 2010, jumped into the IMA reserves. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Instead of being attached to a traditional reserve unit, I'm attached to an active duty unit as a reservist.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
No,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
ours for the Marine Corps just active duty reserves. It's really
Okay.
weird.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
for
I have
me,
a
it's
friend he's in the Air Force. Well, he's actually in the Space Force now. We
nice.
we worked
Crossed
together
over.
as cops. So he was one of my explorers, if you can believe this. He was one of my
Okay.
went to the I mentored him through the academy. He got hired onto our department at 20 years old. Couldn't own a gun, but could carry one on duty.
Yeah.
And he ended up going full-time Army Reserve, full-time active Army Reserve. And then he ended up, after his time in the Army, he went to the Air Force and then slowly but surely ended up in the Space Force doing shit he can't talk to me about. So yeah, it's
Right.
like a weird classification where I know that you can have like a
Yeah.
dual classification, right?
Yep. Yeah. I plan fully before I separate. I think I got like 8 years left. Before I get out, I plan to switch over to Space Force just to say I was in the Space Force.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah. So
Just as long as you don't have to wear. I'm gonna admit the United States Marines have the sharpest uniform, and I loathe to
Agreed.
admit this in front of Chuck. Right?
Agreed.
The United States Marines have the sharpest uniform. Their dress blues are the nicest looking uniform on the planet. This very close second is, now that the Army's gone back to the World War II pinks and greens.
Yep.
That's a very close second for me.
Agreed.
But the Space Force's uniform, it needs some love.
It's better than the Air Force's bus driver outfit that we have.
I want them to go straight Star Trek with that.
Yes.
Like, that's what
I
I'm
agree.
expecting. I want full Star Trek.
Yeah. 90s version,
Yeah.
like the next generation.
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Where they're constantly
that's-
fixing. Yeah, you guys are in my realm now because I am a complete nerd.
Oh,
if you don't watch my podcast, the video part, like usually there's Star Wars stuff in the background somewhere.
Bro, I don't know
yeah.
if you can see. I have my proton pack. I have my Boba Fett. I have
love it.
my Superman. Dude, I'm a geek from way back. I would tell people I'm a nerd, but I'm not smart enough to be a nerd.
I just have the Mandalorian skull right there.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like it. It's not a Mandalorian skull, but
well, whatever.
What you mean.
It was in the Mandalorian.
Eric
was like
likes
a
probably.
Skull thing. I don't know. I thought it was cool.
It is cool. I agree with you. It is cool.
Yes, it is cool. But
my nerd side had to correct you though.
yeah, oh yeah,
That's
well,
yeah.
actually,
yeah. I'm
episode
technically,
37. Anyway,
so let me get back to me. Sorry. The Space Force, the Air Force's IMA, Individual Mobilization Augmentee, for those that wondering what IMA stands for. I'm basically attached to an active duty unit and I can schedule my time however I see fit for the year. So I got to do my annual tour and my individual duty tour, IDTs. I can book those all at one time and I just go once a year. So I don't have to do the 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year. So I go 24 days straight. I hit my requirements and I'm out.
So do you just take a month off from your popo job and then string your days off together and comp time and all that?
Yep. They have to let you off. It's a federal regulation anyway. But where I work, and you guys won't hear me mention where I work just because I don't associate.
We tell people.
Yeah. I don't associate the podcast with where I work. Just know it's North Texas and it's one of the 15 largest departments in the nation. So
Chuck is still going through his retirement process and he still has not officially said what department he works for. And he's been doing this show.
You can figure it out.
It's so easy.
I allow people to figure it out.
Yeah,
they're smart enough.
I'm like, you can figure it out, but I'm following general orders and I'm not going to associate the department.
Yeah,
podcast,
I am not officially talking on behalf of my department at all.
I am not a voice of this agency. I am a voice of myself, and I'm not going to tell you that this is in furtherance of the agency's goals. No,
So the fun part about the reserve unit that I'm on, or the active duty unit, is they don't give a shit about me. When I show up, because I'm just a part-timer. I'm a weekend warrior to them because they're doing it 365, 24/7.
So fly under the radar.
Yeah. So when I show up, they're like, they don't really pay me no mind. They do love when I because I like to train people. They like that I train them in air quotes, real police work, because they're base cops. So
Right.
they look at me as the real cop. Oh, he's the train. He'll train us some badass stuff. So try to get them.
You're like, dude, they don't know. I don't know what I'm doing.
So, been doing that. Just trying to get through all the qualify. I've been in law enforcement itself since '06, because it's military cop. And when I got out after my 4 years, I went straight into another police job up in Michigan, and then transferred down to Texas, where they actually pay their cops properly.
Yeah, that's something that we have learned on this show is very interesting, is that I mean, being paid in law enforcement is not standard nationwide.
Not
And
at
the
all.
protections afforded certain, like, I will admit, I came from a very spoiled state as far as cops go. When in California, like, the pay is good for cops. The laws are a little wonky,
Right.
but the pay is good.
The pay is
And they have the Peace Officer Bill of Rights, which is some ironclad state protections. Now, granted, they're starting to try to mess with that a little bit. They have been for a couple of years.
Qualified immunity,
Qualified immunity.
Yeah. But there's other agencies, other states where we talk to guys and they're like, no, you can get hurt on the job and they can just fire you. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
you get hurt, like, screw you.
Yep. And then that's why I picked a civil service spot. Like, I wanted as much protection as I could get.
Right.
And I also was very cognizant of the city's vibe towards their departments. Like, I wanted to make sure it was a city that supported their department versus one that's on the fence or one that's the other way. Where I'm at historically has supported their police, like, so much so they volunteer every 5 years to do this vote to pay a 0.5 cent tax to their department.
Wow.
And it always wins with like 90% of the vote. So there's a specific fund.
We just had a buddy go up to Texas. He was on the show and he went to Grand Prix, and I almost got recruited to go to Grand Prix by one of their SWAT guys.
I'm gonna smack you if you say Prairie one more time.
Prairie?
Prairie. Yeah.
Grand Prairie.
Grand Prairie.
You got
Grand Prairie.
Weird. And look, I'm batting 1,000 right now.
You have
so
to
keep it going.
Words are hard. He was a Marine. You give him a crayon, he'll know what to do with it. But
exactly.
Well, I've never been there, and so it is what it is. But it was an awesome agency, and he was telling me, he's like, oh, you should come here, leave LA, leave California, come out here. And we have our own CrossFit gym basically in the station. I'm like, that's awesome. And he was telling how much they got paid. And granted, it was at the time, it was only 71,000, but 71,000 in California back in 2016 or 17. Holy crap.
Yeah.
In Texas, that's crazy.
The cost of living, 70,000 is a lot. Like down here, when I first moved here in 2012, my house was 140 grand for 2,000 square feet in the city.
Damn. Wow.
Yeah. So it's, for me, leaving where I was at in Michigan, I was making about as much as a Walmart manager.
Oh, shit,
so,
I mean, depending on where you're at, Walmart managers probably made more.
Well, I was in the $15 to $16 an hour.
Yeah, I was going to say Walmart, a good Walmart manager could probably make 60 grand.
Yeah. And now I'm as a sergeant, I'm floating around 62 an hour. So it's a lot better money down here.
Oh yeah.
And so it's been doing that. Love it. While I was here, I decided to really take my career seriously and try to advance myself as best I can. So I used that GI Bill, got my criminology and criminal justice master's degree while I was here. Became a TCOL instructor. Ended up being a recruit training instructor for 3 years. I did my time in patrol, obviously. Specialized as a detective in property crimes. Ended up running a street unit in property crimes. Got to do a lot of UC work.
That's the best.
Yeah. I love, like, still to this day, it's so far, that's been my favorite gig, is
me too.
Doing buy busts and setting up, trying to catch catalytic converter theft suspects, because that was a big thing while I was still in the field.
Still is.
Yeah. Well, I helped get some legislation changed. I wrote I did a joint task force and headed that off. as a detective because I noticed the trend of the catalytic converters. Like I was starting to get like 10 cases on a Saturday and a Sunday, each day. And I'm like, holy shit. So I'm asking the other 20 detectives in my office, are you guys getting catalytic converter thefts? And they're like, oh yeah. And so then I'm like, okay, we got a problem.
Yeah, it was the platinum, right?
Yeah, platinum, uranium, and iridium. That
Yeah.
was so those are the
Wow.
3 controlled, regulated metals, if you will, that are in there. And when I figured all this out, I was able to create a task force. I threw it up there and asked if we could do it, and got a 4-week permission to do a joint task force thing. Ended up writing a 40-page paper on exactly what we did, what the language was, because they use different language. And we found out that the money was going overseas. It wasn't just your meth heads that are out there going. It was organized crime. Jordanians were involved. They were going state to state. Like it was huge. Yeah. They were recycling up in Detroit, recycling in Florida, and they were also crossing the border into Mexico.
Wow.
Transporting all that money. Yeah. We ended up seizing about, I think it was close to $500,000 worth of property. Just in 4, I'm only talking 4 weeks. So we had a van that was loaded up with a few 100 catalytic converters. I had intel pack on 108 suspects. One of those suspects ended up shooting a cop and murdering a civilian when he tried to carjack her. And I got pulled into basically a fusion center, real-time crime center, where we were trying to track this guy who they didn't know who he was. I was able to identify him through my packet, and then we ended up catching him he was trying to go down to the border, and we got him
right
in between there. So yeah, it was crazy.
Man, I worked an undercover narco assignment, a task force, because we didn't have our agency didn't have its own narco unit. We would put a body into a combined major crimes narco unit for the county. And so you had to put in for it, and like they had to accept you, blah, blah, blah. So when I got accepted into that, I was like, it was cool. But that was some of the most fun I've ever had with my clothes on. It was just like hanging from helicopters and going in. We have a thing in California, camp, the marijuana grow eradication. And they'd fly you in on a long line, and he'd chop weed and ship it out with a chopper, and then you go undercover and do your buy bus and it was always different. And then we'd have a detective bureau call us up and say, hey, we've got a homicide suspect, and we're not geared up for a 24-hour surveillance. We need you. And so our team would have to come out and work those kinds of things and stuff like that. So it's just so much fun, man. So many things you could do.
Yeah, being plain clothes and sneak, play hide and go seek with people is
snooping and
paid for it.
I used to love that. That was always the best part. But now, like, drugs are legal in California, so it's a lot of narco units are getting brought in to do like ABC shit and actual vice stuff. And it's not conducive to police work anymore. And it's like, oh, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, I think that's why I gravitated towards property crimes, because 1, nobody likes a thief.
Right.
And 2, it's, business aplenty. And the writing's on the wall that certain drugs are going to be legalized, nationwide. Even here in Texas, we don't really sweat personal use marijuana. So, and it's not legal. So but when you've got so many other states that have legalized it, and your prosecutor isn't really even going after it, nobody wants it. It costs more money to take the weed, test it, keep it in the property room, do all that stuff than it does to,
I crushed more weed because in California at the time it was decriminalized. So it was, under an ounce, it was just a ticket.
Okay.
And so it was like, I crushed more weed under my shoe and told people to kick rocks and flip them to owe me a favor than I ever, gave a citation for.
Yeah.
And nobody gave a shit. And now I'm in Idaho where drugs are still illegal, but I'm right on the border with Washington, and Washington's like, fuck it, everything's legal. I'll tell you something crazy. You're in Texas where, they have the wonderful needed killing defense, where, why'd you kill him? Oh, he needed killing. Right?
I was like, I'm not familiar with that case.
Yeah. But that's always my joke about Texas and how wonderful Texas feels about like deadly force and protecting your home and all that kind of stuff. It's great. Whereas my neighbor to the west, Washington, buddy of mine, previous co-host of the show, works there. If they traffic stop a car and they obs a gun, they have to write a warrant. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So
yeah, no plain view.
No plain, like they have to squeeze and freeze the car so they can tow it. Right? They can tow it. They can do all the things, but to even go in the car and get the gun, they have to get a telephonic warrant.
Well, I guess it depends on why you stop. I mean, do you have an arrestable offense and then you see the gun, or what is it?
Like you walk up to the car, you stop the dude for no blink, failing to use the turn signal.
Okay.
You walk up to the car and he's got a freaking gun right there on the he could have an AR, he could have a MAC-10, he could have something that's clearly illegal right there, and you have to write a warrant.
Okay.
Dope,
well,
same thing. Dope, same thing.
It's a little dope, same thing.
Yep. Like if you want to get it out of the car, you have to write a warrant. Period.
I was gonna say in Texas, a little different. Everybody's got a gun.
Right. Well, I know, same thing. Like,
yeah, we have certain laws, rules, whatever you where if it is in plain view, it needs to be holstered in a way.
Right.
But and the definition of holster is very loose. So for us, like just having the gun and all that stuff. But if I see dope and the gun, or if I see an open container, alcohol in the gun, like you're getting out of the car and I'm getting that gun. Like
right. That's exactly it. Like that was always the thing for I don't. Yeah. It's crazy.
That's how it was in California. But
if you want to go old school and you know that it's a shithead and you're trying to, I mean, you can always cash bond on the ticket, inventory the car and seize the gun because it's expensive property, and then get your warrant later. At least he's not out there with that gun.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. Like creative cops find creative, modern problems require modern solutions.
Yeah. I was
gonna say, this is also the state, because I was just in Washington this last weekend. This is the state that is also hiring illegals to come in and be cops. And I spoke to a man who was arrested by one.
Well, I haven't even heard of that, and I live next to him.
Yeah, I don't. I just talked to him, and he was like, "Yeah, I was basically put in handcuffs. He wasn't arrested, but he was put in handcuffs by a cop who was illegal. He was not a citizen of the United States, and he basically, what happened was he read the plate wrong, thought it was a rolling stolen, put him in hooks, and was kind of a jerk to him. Didn't tell him anything why he was stopping and why he was going in handcuffs, and then pissed him off. And then another cop came up and was like, "Yeah, that he's not even a citizen."
Well, okay, so not a citizen is different than illegal immigrant.
True.
So, that's how he was describing it. I don't know the legislation up there. I do know the whole DACA kids down in California, they're getting jobs, and the Dreamers are getting jobs, and they're they were born here, but I guess no, they weren't born here. They came here as kids. So this is all they know.
Okay. So so I'm looking this up. Seattle PD is recruiting DACA kids to be cops. So, I mean, that's anyway.
I mean, they're crushing it in police recruitment anyway, so it makes sense.
Right. Who doesn't want to be a cop in Washington,
right?
Seattle nowadays, right?
Yeah. I've got one of the best cops I've worked around is a Seattle transfer. He's had to get the fuck out of there, he said. So
well, exactly. I mean, it's a state of law enforcement. It's interesting that the more we've gotten into, and I'm a states' rights guy, right? I get it. That's you don't like the laws of your state, move to another state,
right?
That's how it works. But it's kind of becoming the same thing for law enforcement, and it's like you don't like being a cop in your state because the laws are stupid. You're going to leave and go be a cop in another state, and it's. Well, that's why California has deteriorated into Thunderdome.
Yeah, and I try to tell people that, like, even some of the old school cops that, like my dad, he retired from the same department I'm at, and he's like, I couldn't be a cop today. He's like, I don't know how you do it, and I'm sitting back and I'm like, I love it. Like I'm been doing 18 years and I'm obsessed with it still. I love being a cop, but it is about the support from the citizens. It's about the rules and regulations that you got to follow. All of those are, have to do with morale and whatnot. And there are some things that I'm just like, ugh, this sucks. Like our pursuit policies and stuff. I'm just like, come on, let me have the pit back. Let me give it back to me.
They took the pit.
Yeah, like,
Oh,
because
yeah.
so I'll give you. I'm old enough to remember when so my dad came on and he could make people do the chicken and choke them out willy
Yeah.
nilly, right? Like
Yeah.
you just handed it out like candy.
Yeah.
And then
Lateral vascular neck
right.
restraint.
And then Rodney King and all that stuff, and Daryl Gates put his foot in his mouth, and all of a sudden the carotid restraint at LAPD became, if you can choke him, you can smoke him. It was deadly force.
Yeah.
And my agency, because as LAPD goes, so do other agencies, right?
Yeah.
They all take their cues from these big agencies. Like, well, they must know what they're doing. Well,
Yep.
newsflash, they don't.
They don't.
Not
I mean, when
always.
you have to go to an 8-hour class to put a sling on your shotgun, you have a shotgun in your police car. You want to put a sling on it, you got to go to an 8-hour school.
Right.
Yeah.
And not only that, I think they still work as they have an armory, right? Don't you have to go get
yeah.
You trust
so there's
me with,
two different. Yeah, there's an armory for getting like rifles and stuff like that, getting assigned to you.
yeah.
And then each station, I don't know how I know all this info on this, but at each station, there is what's called a kit room. And the kit room is where you get your rifle. You can store your rifle, you can keep it in your locker. Generally, you're going to store it there because you don't want to have any of that responsibility. So you give it to the kit room, you can check it out. You check out your shotguns, your bean bags, any extra rounds you might need from the kit room. So yeah, technically, they do have an armory, and there are many armories in the city.
Yeah, we had a closet. We had a gun closet, and you opened up, you used your key, you opened the door, you unlocked the rack, you pulled your rifle out, you locked the rack, you threw it in the car, you threw your shotgun in the car. And then eventually the shotguns went in the trunk and they replaced them with the 40 millimeters.
Okay.
Less lethal. So it was the rifle and the 40 millimeter in the car.
Okay.
And I'm all about it. But when I came on, I became a defensive tactics instructor. They sent me to LAPD's school, and even the instructors at LAPD were like, "Look, don't use our policy. Our policy is shit. The neck restraint, the carotid restraint should be top of hands on, right?
Yeah.
Should be below baton. It's way less injurious, blah, 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 blah." So I went back to my agency and I rewrote the policy and got the chief to sign off on it. And we were back to, rear neck restraint, just good old sleeper hold, put people to sleep, slap them in cuffs and call it a day. And it works fantastically. And then you get this guy in, was it Minneapolis, right? Freddie Gregg,
George Floyd.
And you get all these other ones, and I can't breathe people, and they have literally, like, they're fine with watching athletes in an octagon undergo it literally hundreds of times a year,
right?
In an MMA fight, but God forbid the police use it on a kid. Whatever.
You're preaching to the choir here, because I've been doing jiu-jitsu since 2006.
Yeah.
And,
wow.
And I'm a big proponent of mandatory, this is just a generalized gauge, but blue belts in grappling for police. I think that you should
be great.
The department should be paying for you to go to approved gyms or whatever it is, because you don't want them going to McDojo bullshit. And it's with the the Supreme Court ruling that chokes are a deadly force maneuver and stuff like that. Like, you've taken, I think the last department, the last holdout was Kansas City. They'd been using it since the 70s, had a ton of documentation where they had never hurt or killed anybody. And if you really think about it, jiu-jitsu gyms, they're LLCs. They're small business. Around the nation, there's thousands of them, and they're taking the insurance liability of being choked. Somebody possibly, think about it from that perspective. But police departments don't want that liability. I'm like,
well, I think this is where cops have become their own worst enemy, right? As a defensive tactics instructor, I think that my views on this and you as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, your views on this are probably similar to mine.
I was a control tactics, defensive tactics instructor as well.
Most cops don't do their homework. They don't do the preparation. They don't keep themselves at a state of readiness. We used to joke that it was like, oh, you're going to show me all the wristy twisty shit, and then all I'm going to do is go and beat the shit out of him. And I'm like, yeah, but
dude,
if you use and learn the wristy twisty shit, you won't need to beat the shit out of him. You can gain compliance. All this. Like,
also,
we would teach grappling. We would teach
yeah.
all this stuff, and the guys would do it because it was mandatory. And then inevitably, you'd have that weak sister who'd go to rest and control training and go out IOD for a month. Oh, I farted and fell down, and the department would then, oh, no more wristy twisty for 6 months because shitbird.
They don't react, they overreact.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. We used to do it like every 6 months, and then it went to once a year, and then it went to, you're lucky if you got it every couple years, maybe every 5 years. And then like, oh shit, we got to send everyone, and then you'd be out like a whole divisional training day. But I remember when they put a moratorium on the chokehold. And it was just under deadly force. So if you could use it, you could utilize deadly force, right? But then they put a moratorium on it and said, if you use this right on the heels of the George Floyd deal, if you use this, you will be fired. And I don't know if this happened for you in Texas, but they put a moratorium on it for us in California. And I said, hold on one second, because I've seen where you could utilize a chokehold without, in a real life situation where they're trying to take a cop's gun, but you don't have a shot because you're afraid you're going to shoot your partner. So you choke them out. End of story. Handcuff. Dude's alive. Everyone's alive. So I put forth that scenario, which I've actually seen. And I said, so what happens if that happens and we utilize the chokehold? Like, you're going to be fucking fired. You'll be alive, but you'll be fired. And I said, really? So you'd rather me just stab him or beat him over the head with my radio as opposed to just putting him to sleep?
The answer is yes.
They're like, yeah.
Right.
So one of the things that I've posed to a lot of departments, and I'm like, are you training your guys in this technique? I'm like, well, no, you can't use it. I'm like, okay, so let's say you get into a deadly force situation and you put the choke on because you've seen it on UFC and you're like, oh yeah, I fucking know how to do this. And what is every use of force continuum in every department that you use that force until it's no longer necessary, right?
Right.
So if I don't know what I'm doing with a chokehold or a sleeper hold or whatever you want to call it, and I put the guy out and I continue to hold because technically it's a deadly force situation, so I could kill him, but then he goes to sleep and I continue to hold even though the threat's done because I didn't train. I didn't understand. I didn't recognize that he went out, whatever it is. Like, do you see the liability that you're now holding on your guy? It's a double-edged sword because you're not letting them train it. You're not teaching them how to use it. And at the same time, if they get in a situation where it would be authorized, now they're going to get in trouble because they killed the guy because they didn't know to let go, because the argument's going to be made is like, well, he passed out. Why did you continue to hold? He was no longer a threat.
Yeah. And
so,
well, I was training by osmosis. I did it because I watched it on TV, right? Like, that's not acceptable.
Right.
Where it should be trained so you have that knowledge.
Yes, that's my point, is we should at least be training it as a way to defend and recognize, oh shit, like this is where it really starts to slip in if somebody does it to us. And then two, if we ever have to use it for ourselves, to understand and recognize, like, okay, because I've been put out more times than I can count. And I've been put out as a demonstration to other people. I'm like, all right, this is what it looks like. Guys, as soon as I go out, like, come grab my arm and see, like, sometimes it does kind of feel like I'm fighting, like, my body's natural reaction. I was like, but you'll feel the difference. And
I mean, we've all seen people go out for different reasons, drugs and hanging themselves and all, like the muscle spasms and the torquing that happens to your body involuntarily, come on, be ready for it. I would tell my guys, I'm like, they might poop and pee themselves. Really? Yeah, they might.
First fight I ever got in as a cop was with a diabetic patient.
Oh, God,
he was having a diabetic episode and I didn't know.
Probably thought he was drunk.
I did. I thought he was wasted. Never seen it before. He was slurring his speech. He was stumbling all over the place. But as soon as I grabbed the hold of him, I was already doing a takedown. Like, he was already going to the ground. But as I'm taking him down, I remember reflecting and going, God, he felt weird. What's the deal? And I go into like a knee on belly position, and I got his arms now, and he's on his back, and he's just still like kind of like
He's
doing
just
one of these,
whack.
but he's like Gumby. It was weird, and so I was able to step back for a second, recognize like, oh, he's not fighting, but he is. I got control, and then a nurse comes running over. She was like, I was trying to get him some orange juice or whatever the hell she was trying to get him, and because I don't know if his sugar was too high or if it was too low. I don't remember the difference, but either way,
Too low, probably.
he was out of it, and she was trying to go get something, but she had to leave him by himself for a second. And it just happened to be right when I was there, and he stepped to me like he was gonna fight me, and I was like, "What the fuck?" And so I just took his ass down.
I've talked about on this show. I went to one. The guy we thought it was PCP guy at Home Depot picking shopping carts up and swinging them over his head at patrons in the parking lot.
Okay.
And I'm the first on scene, and I'm about to stick him, right? And my beat partner shows up second on scene, and he's got the dog, and he pops the door, and he's gonna send the dog in for a fucking bite because it's bull in the ring at this point, right? He's in the middle, and one of the guys that happened to be in the parking lot was a big goon squad deputy from the sheriff's department, and God bless him. I was like, okay, we can take this dude down because it's me and him. And then the dog shows up and we're like, oh, we can let the dog do the Lord's work, whatever. And then right at the last second, I see the dude, his shirt comes up and I see the insulin pump. And I went, whoa. Hold it. Like, you got to hold the dog back. And just that half a second of like, holy shit.
Yeah. At least you recognized it.
Yeah. It was so lucky. I mean, it was not.
I think that is oftentimes this is a problem that people have with law enforcement. And I brought this up. I can't remember her name, the boiling water situation. I'm sure you guys saw that video.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I did a breakdown of that on our pod, and we did it live, and I hadn't seen the video. Like, I hadn't seen the whole thing. I just saw a clip of somebody throwing water and getting smoked, and I was like, oh shit. And so I wanted to see the story, but I wanted to do kind of a live reaction type thing. And as I was going through it, there were like 6 to 8 times I called out, all right, I would have left. Like right here, I'd leave. Like, they hadn't even made it into the house yet. Like, all right, I'd leave here.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting back into kind of what you did on that scene with the insulin thing. I'm like, why is the other officer? I get it if this guy's new or whatever, or he's just not thinking. Me as the backup officer, I'm going to be like, hey, dude, let's go. Like, we can get what we need off the computer. She's a SIG 13, which is a mental person where I'm at. She's SIG 13. Like, there's going to be information on the computer. Let's just go get her info there, because that was the big hang up of this whole call, was the guy wanted her ID, and she's the complainant. And I'm like, okay. And then and then when he pulls his gun out and says the line, like, I'll fucking shoot you in your fucking face, or whatever the hell he says. Again, why were you not, as the partner? Whoa, hold on. Partner, head outside. Ma'am, I'm sorry. If there's nothing else, we're going to take off. Like, intervene. And that is where I think a lot of people get on law enforcement. They think we don't hold each other accountable. But when you know how a dynamic, fluid situation happens, it's like, he's going to be held accountable, but like, it was too late. Like, he didn't step in quick enough. And by that time, like, do you want him to just put cuffs on him right then and there on scene? Like, it doesn't work that way.
Well, and part of that, creating your own exigency, right? And that's,
he definitely,
I look at this stuff, and I don't think, well, first of all, let's back up. And on this show, we have taken a firm stance on the fact that it is either blind ignorance, willful ignorance, or a deliberate attempt to pussify law enforcement by removing the safeguards that were in place on hiring shitty cops, the psyche evals, the stress academies. We are deliberately allowing the corporate law enforcement, if you will, to remove the things that we put in place a long time ago to ensure that this kind of shit didn't happen, which was cops that were like dyed in the wool hard, that could hold their fucking water under pressure, that could make split-second decisions, that wouldn't freak out, that wouldn't suffer from contempt of cop, that wouldn't create their own exigency, that did have the maturity to go, you know what, we can get you another day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we don't have that.
And it's only going to get worse because nobody has social skills anymore.
Oh God. Yeah.
I've said this countless times. It's like 2 prongs. One, You got to tell people what you're doing as law enforcement, explain things to them fully so that they understand, and they'll be more likely to go along with the situation.
Stop the secret squirrel shit that we like to do.
You don't need to.
Right.
Let everyone know what the fuck you're doing. It puts everyone on the same page. It allows them to calm down. It removes the wondering out of it. If you're getting arrested, hey, you're getting arrested. If you're not, hey, we're detaining you for X, Y, and Z, and this is the reason why. You match the description of someone.
Can I add to that before you get your other prong? Because this is a really good point. And what I like to emphasize to my rookies is I'm a new sergeant. I just finished my first year as a sergeant. So you know how that goes. You get the shitty schedule, and with the shitty schedule, you get all the young
lobotomy, by the way.
When I turned over to the dark side. Yeah. So I'm very much a trainer at heart. So with these rookies, I catch them like all the time to what you're saying, Chuck, of trying to keep everything to themselves. And I'm like, listen, he's moving around and you see him moving around. Call him out. Hey, I see you moving around, guy. Yeah. It's making me nervous. It's making me think you're reaching for something or trying to hide dope. I was like, if you don't call that out, let them know. And now you're going to get a change in behavior. They're either going to, now they're going to make a decision to fully commit, which keeps you in a safe place, versus the not knowing and them thinking that they've got one up on you and then you're behind the curve. So I love the idea of calling out, not just, hey, you're going to be under arrest. We're checking you for warrants or stuff like that. I like to call out what I'm actually seeing and thinking as the situation's happening. Hey, man, right now I got my gun pointed at you and I see your eyes looking around. I know you're trying to run. If you run, you take the chance to get shot.
The stream of consciousness narration, especially in an era of body cam.
Yeah, right? Morgan Freeman, your fucking duty. You know what I mean?
Excuse me, man.
Tell your story.
Tell your story. And
it made it
more.
If you don't, somebody else will.
The cameras.
Yep. So
I remember, Eric. I remember I had a guy. He was at the gas station fighting, and I've talked about this, but this one sticks out in my mind because I was a young cop, and it was those realizations of like the things that come out of your mouth and what other people are hearing. And he was fighting, and I had his arm, arm locked behind him, and he kept going. Like he was pulling away, and his chicken wing was getting ready to snap. And I said, stop fighting, or I'm going to break your arm. And then
technically,
I immediately heard it in my ears, and I started saying, stop resisting, or you're going to break your arm.
There you go. Yeah.
But it was that knowledge, and I was kind of laughing at the situation because the guy's being so ridiculous. But at the same time, I had, because I wasn't freaked out, because I wasn't in condition black, and because I was in control, and I knew that no matter what, this guy was going to jail because I had my skills, I had my tools. I was able to hear my own voice and go, no, don't say that. That's not a good way to put it. Let's say it differently.
Yep, I agree. Sorry, Chuck. I didn't mean to hijack you. You can tell your other prong of that part, man.
Yeah.
No worries. I lost train of thought for a second.
Damn it. I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, it happened. I was like, damn,
it happens to me all the time.
Okay.
I kept trying to repeat it, and it just disappeared.
Try to refresh. We were talking about, talking and not keeping things to yourself, narrating.
Yes. Narrating. Body cams.
Yep.
Tell your story.
He's like, nope, I lost it.
I'm lost.
I apologize.
I had it, and I was like, damn, and I lost it, and I got it back, and I was like, cool. And it just
he's holding on to it like a squirrel with a nut.
I am, and this may help you guys in your podcasting, but I write down my thoughts as we're talking. Like if I have something, but you're going, I'll write that shit down.
Yeah,
So
I have
smart.
two computers. Like I have my two screens, and I have one for the podcast, and then I have one for like administrative like duties and stuff. Yeah, so it's helpful. I have to do it though, so because when something gets said, I have to write down what time I have to. Like we've had people like
for the clip.
Yeah, and I'm like, nope, I gotta edit that out because you just said somebody's name, and I don't want them to be mad.
I write down what I think is noteworthy, like if you said a badass quote or it's like the beginning of a cool story or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, at 12, 20, 15,
Exactly. Well,
bam.
'cause
Yeah.
editing is
Yep. Because I
the
got to
main
do
part.
it. I'm a one man freaking
Yep.
show on
Yeah.
the editing and all that stuff. It's a pain in the ass.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yep.
yeah, but it's changing. I finally added a second person and
Yeah,
banded
it's
my
2
name.
cops, 1
Yeah.
donut, right?
Well,
So
okay, let me give you the idea behind the name. I am 2 cops. I am a
okay.
civilian cop at a municipality, but I'm also a military cop.
Oh, I
Nice.
see.
That is where the 2
Yeah.
cops came in, and I basically copied 2 Bears, 1 Cave, which is another podcast I really like
Yeah, Bert
with
Kreischer.
yep, and Tom Segura,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and then after I made it, it was probably about 3 months later, another cop was like, "Oh, like 2 girls, 1 cup, bro," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Fuck."
Uh,
Okay,
yeah.
well,
Yeah, it's like the porn, dude.
I was like, "All right, well, it's still funny. Oh, well."
Yeah.
Yeah, we came up with our name years and years ago because it's like, long story short, we had a podcast that was just guys sitting around talking shit,
Hell yeah.
and the idea was, men would tune in because they would feel like they were hanging out with the boys, and women tune in because they would feel like they were getting to listen in on the secret meetings of what guys talk about when women aren't around.
Okay.
Inevitably, all of my friends are cops, firefighters, prior military. A lot of them, I have my rock and roll friends like Marco is on our show and he's a drummer, he's a civilian, whatever. But we would inevitably we had a little segment where somebody would like tell, we call them war stories, right? It's stories from the street, shit we saw. And somebody would throw one out there. And I had a friend of mine who is still listening to the show, and he calls me up and he goes, dude, just do that. I said, what? And he goes, forget all the other bullshit. That was the most fascinating 20 minutes I've ever heard because you were answering questions I've always wanted to ask. But like, you don't know if it's okay. It's like we talk about veterans and one of the first things that people say to a veteran who's been deployed is, did you kill anybody?
Yeah.
It's like, you don't ask people
Yeah.
that,
Let's
right?
still
Like,
talk about the most traumatic part of my life. Yeah, let's
right,
bring
exactly.
that up. Yeah.
But
That
yet when
happens
we get
all the time.
together, we are fully prepared to talk about the most awful because I always say it's transactional. It's like if I share my awful stuff with you, I know
Right.
that not only have you had your own awful stuff, but then the reciprocation of you will share your awful stuff with me. And then we both, process it in I hate group therapy, but this is sort of group therapy kind of a way, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So he was like, dude, it was fascinating. So we just kind of called it war stories. And then apparently there's like Oliver North has a podcast where he actually tells stories from war called War.
Oh,
So we added the official to it. And
nice. Yep. I kind of ran through that because when I first created the name, I started looking it up and I didn't see anything. And then somebody sent me a podcast that was called Two Cops and Two Cops and a Donut or something like that. Something very similar. But
Interesting.
I reached out to those guys the first year that I was doing it, and I reached out to them like 4 or 5 times, and I had noticed that they hadn't made a new episode in like a few years. So I think they just kind of
Got it.
abandoned what they did.
Yeah.
But I was trying to like be like, hey man, this is kind of what I was going to do. If you guys aren't doing it anymore, like you guys cool with this, even though it's not the same name, like I'm just
Right.
trying to I was trying to do the right thing and never heard anything from them or whatever. So
so that's permission.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And yeah,
Implied
kind of the
consent.
same. My idea behind why I started mine is I was going for my master's degree and going through getting my thesis done, and I had noticed a trend in policing that we only should use social media for like propaganda stuff. Like, oh look,
Right.
here's a cop playing basketball with the minority kids in the street, and we have 3 camera angles. Like, what are the odds of that?
Yeah.
Or here, yeah, here's the cop at the local shelter. Come get Fluffy before he gets put down.
Right.
And who are you winning over? You're only winning over people that already like cops. Like you're not
Right.
doing any favors. So I said that we're underutilizing social media, and I didn't really have an answer on how to utilize it better. But I needed to prove my point that cops think we should be using it, citizens think we should be using it. But there's all this red tape and liability and cops getting fired for using social media. There's no training on it.
Right.
So that was kind of the premise. And then I do plan to go for my doctorate eventually.
Oh, wow.
And I'm waiting for my kids to get done with, I got a 15 and a 13-year-old. So once they get done with school, There's no rush.
How,
I'll get it.
how was your master's?
Oh, cake. Easy. I mean, you do it
Because I'm
for
going
it's
for that right
criminology.
now.
It's criminology and criminal justice, man. I mean, if you
That's all
are
shit
in,
you already know. Yeah.
yeah, it's stuff I
Oh well,
know.
I decided to switch and I'm doing MBA instead of that,
Oh,
and because I really
business.
like the criminology, but I was like,
Yep.
man,
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna do MBA, so that's what I'm going
Yeah,
for
I
right
got
now.
lucky. My college was a dual master's program,
Oh, nice.
and like that,
Sweet.
it was like new, like to that college.
Wow.
I went to TCU, and so they were recruiting cops heavily, trying to get some credibility to the program,
Sure.
and I got in, that first year, and for me it was fun because it was people in criminal justice from all around the nation.
Mhm.
And I got to see a lot of cool perspective. And like I tell
That's
everybody,
awesome.
getting your master's degree does not make you a better cop. It just gives you perspective and gives you opportunities that
Right.
you wouldn't normally have. So no, I do
Right.
not think I'm a better cop because I have my degree. I
The
know high
department probably
school.
does, or the city probably does, because
Right. Yeah. On paper, I probably look great,
right,
but
right.
didn't make me a better cop. I promise you.
Yeah.
I know high school graduates that will, run circles around people with degrees, run circles around me.
Yeah.
And they're just great cops. But
And a lot of great cops don't have any interest in getting their degree because
right.
they wanna go and do the damn job.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
it's funny is I saw guys getting promoted that like one guy had a degree in public administration. And admittedly, I was told early on by I said, "What should I get my degree in criminal justice?" And the cop, she says, "No, they're
Yeah.
gonna teach you
Everybody said
criminal justice.
that's
Go
such
get your
bullshit.
degree in business administration."
Yeah. I that historic maybe in the past, maybe in the 90s, that was a big thing. But I tell you what, in
Mhm.
2024, after Mike Brown and a lot of these major cases and stuff like that happened, people were looking for people with criminology and criminal justice degrees.
Well,
Yeah, to
and that's
answer the
For
the
questions.
police
thing.
jobs and stuff.
So
But
you get something related to your field. I would have gotten a degree, if I had thought about I would have gotten a law degree because,
yeah,
that law and psych
True.
would benefit
yeah,
you more than public administration and business, and that
right.
was to me, I've realized but doing the job that the people that are giving you that advice of get your MBA or get your public administration, the guy who had his public administration degree, he was a turd of a cop.
Yeah,
But they loved him to be a supervisor and new lieutenant and all that kind of stuff because he was a fucking bean counter and he was
Yeah.
yep.
a
Yes,
dog and
man.
pony show guy and a
Yep,
yes man and all that stuff.
yep.
He wasn't the guy like we had a guy when I worked narcs, he was rotating out as a supervisor because he was getting promoted to lieutenant.
Mm,
And
Mm.
we all went to the narcotics officers conference that year. It was his last one because he knew he was getting promoted out. We all took him to dinner and everybody raised a glass. And one of my friends made the best toast. He said to Ken, he's proof that if you can get promoted, anybody can get promoted, right? Like
yeah,
Huh.
there's
love
hope.
Yeah.
it. Yep. Yeah. So as I did the degree, I was trying to figure out, did this thesis like, how do you prove it? And then I
Yeah.
was a huge proponent of Joe Rogan's podcast. I love his podcast.
Yeah.
And he was constantly trying to get comedians. He's like, listen, there's like 1,000 of us in this nation. And he goes, maybe 100 of us are funny. He's like, and how many of us have the talent to do a podcast in our niche? He's like, so
Right.
he's constantly trying to get all his comedian friends to do their own podcast. And that's when the light bulb went off. It goes, oh, that's how I'll do this. I'm like, I don't know hardly any cops on that have a podcast. So I create,
Mhm.
and there's probably 2-3 million podcasts at that time.
Yeah.
There wasn't any
Yeah.
like what I was thinking. There was, funny guys and stuff like that. So my goal was I've always thought the best way to bridge that gap that I'm talking about using the social media stuff is
Mhm.
education. Try to give education and perspective and then the humanizing part. So that's kind of how I broke it down. Who are you? Where are you from? What got you into law enforcement or anybody in the criminal justice system?
Yeah.
Um, and then, like judges, mayors, all like I've had them all. And then you get to know them. So then when we do start talking about the education portion, like now you've got a gauge of that person and you can say whether you think they're full of shit or not. But how many have actually sat down and talked to a judge? What's the training like? What does it take to become a judge? Like, what's the
Right.
checks and balances for you?
Right.
What do you think judges are doing good? What are they doing bad? How can we improve? What's the future of being a
Oh,
judge?
wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
beautiful. So that was kind of the idea. There's the education portion. Now people are getting something from what you're saying, and they can make a decision for themselves, because most of us have never got the chance to sit down and talk to a judge unless we're going through some shit.
In which case
Yeah.
he's talking at you, not to you.
Yes. And so that was like the premise. Get a SWAT guy on. Let's talk about SWAT versus like a patrol guy. What's a patrol guy going through? What's a patrol guy doing LAPD versus NYPD? We go across the nation versus
Right.
a Southern patrol officer. You know, the culture of policing is different. And that was
Very
something I
different.
was trying to pull out. But then I realized that I was shortchanging myself, and I was kind of creating an echo chamber, which I hate. So then I got felons on there. I got guys that were wrongly convicted, and we talk about where they think the system's messed up from their side, community leaders, things like that. Admittedly, they are harder to get because they don't trust you and they don't know how you're going to get the show going. But some of my best episodes have been guys that have been convicted of homicide and were exonerated. And another guy that actually, he did commit an ag assault, but he was wrongly convicted and got like a 52-year sentence and released after 24 years because he shot the guy that killed and executed his cousin. He got like revenge, shot him, didn't kill him. The guy that killed his cousin got 10 years. He got 52 years.
What?
Tell me, how does that,
and then
how does that work?
I know. And then the guy that he shot that didn't die, the guy that he shot ended up advocating his release later on, like years down the road, like, hey man, I'm already in, out, living a life, and he's still in and got another 25 years to do, which is nuts. And so they advocated, and you know, after exhausting all the appeals, the actual prosecutor, the new DA, reached out and saw and was like, no, this is wrong, and they got it changed. So that was kind of the idea, is to like bridge that gap that way through education. And then it just kind of ballooned from there, where I started getting other ideas, like how we're all chatting right now. One night while sipping whiskey, I was like, you know what?
Where the best ideas are born.
Yeah, I'm going to review some body cam footage, and like just raw, like never seen before. And I'm just going to talk about it and act as though I'm the cop in the body cam, versus like donut operator who takes a whole situation, he watches it, he breaks it down, he's got all these arrows and stuff, and you know, knows the history of the thing. I'm like, that's awesome. But I don't want to Monday morning quarterback anybody, or say, you know, what I wanted to do was kind of break down what goes through a cop's mind as a call's developing. Most people never get that perspective. So for instance, you're on a traffic stop. My biggest concern as I'm approaching a car is hands. I want to be able to see in there and see hands. Once I see hands, I'm chill. So just to give you a short example for people listening, I watch a body cam video. Okay, we're doing a traffic stop. Okay, as we pull up, I'm going to stay behind the B pillar. And right now, the only thing I'm caring about is hands. Okay, and I'll pause. And there's a live chat going on. Okay, as I'm right here, I'm worried about hands. So my next part is if I can't see him, I'm going to tell this guy, hey, could you do me a favor and put your hands up on the steering wheel? Okay, cool. Play. And then the next thing you know, that cop's like, hey, sir, could you just put your hands up on the steering wheel? And then you look like Nostradamus.
Right.
Or if the call goes to shit, you realize where the stuff starts to go to shit, and then we can talk about it. Okay, you can see that this guy ended up pulling a gun. You could tell the cop felt a little uneasy, but he didn't call it out. He kept it to himself. He should have called it out right here. And it's not intended to Monday morning quarterback. It's to improve training, improve police work. Because I tell you what, as much as I wanted to train civilians and bridge the community that way, I'm training cops. Way more. They're getting on there and they're either like, no, that's bullshit. Like you shouldn't say, you don't know that. And then I'm like, okay, let's
talk that out.
Let's talk that out. Okay. So had he said something, he's like, well, now you're giving your element of surprise. He knows exactly where you're at. I'm like, listen, I hate to tell you, there's only two places you can approach from: passenger side, driver's side. You're not surprised.
Stop playing secret squirrel, dude. Just
So
but everybody, like, that's it's funny you say that, because as we rebranded over the last year and a half with integrating. So Marco, as we talked about, he's a tattoo artist. Actually, he's out in Austin. We grew up together, but now he's in Austin. So if you ever need a tattoo and you're in the Austin area,
I'm actually, I'm due. This is the only one I've got right now.
He's great, man. He does all my work. But you know, he does the show from Austin. But his perspective is he was a drummer and he's a tattoo artist, right? That's the perspective he brings to it.
Okay.
Our other one of my other closest friends in the world is on the show, Matt. He was in the Navy, and then as many veterans do, they get into legal trouble, and he did 2.5 years in prison for something stupid he did when he was 21, 22 years old.
Yeah.
You know, and he brings the perspective of like, if you fuck up, cops are going to come get you, like he can talk a little bit about. So we've kind of gotten that, like, okay, now it's the four of us, every man perspective. I'm a cop without military service. Chuck's a cop with military service. Matt's a military service, no police work, but now he's he's a paramedic EMT. And that just happened like in the last 2 years,
Yeah.
and he develops this heart for service, and he's like, I got to get back out there. So I get what you're saying, and that's kind of where we want to go with this, is that there's more communication that we need to or better communication, I guess, that we need to do in just like like to your point, showing a cop in uniform playing basketball or skateboarding or dancing at a freaking party in the park. It doesn't show that cops are people too, right? It feels staged, it feels phony,
Yeah.
and the only thing, in any way, it kind of makes them look ridiculous because
Yeah.
they're
And don't get me wrong, I do think it plays a part.
sure,
It's just
but it's
when
not
that's the
full
only thing
scale.
that when the
Yeah,
police department's the one pushing that,
yeah,
when it's organic and somebody
sure,
else just happened to,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, that's cool.
right.
I like that, like with Officer Norman and some of these like, Matt Thornton and these guys that are just known for community stuff. Like they get filmed all the
Yeah.
time and it's
Right.
organic. You can tell.
Yeah,
It's genuine.
charity's done in the dark. If a guy's helping a kid or helping an old lady or playing basketball with a bunch of kids, and some passerby is like, check this cop out, look what he's doing. And he's not
Right.
doing it for views. He's
Yeah.
not doing it for clicks. The department's not putting it out there.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, like you said, genuine.
Yeah.
But
That organic side.
Yeah. We used to get calls to like disturbances working, in when I was on just got on patrol. And so we'd get called to a bunch of kids skateboarding, causing noise. And we would go there, we'd have to respond
Right.
out there.
Gotta
And we'd
make
get there and we
contact.
just start
sure.
we would just start skateboarding with the kids
Yeah.
and just hanging out. And we weren't trying to film it or anything like that. But if someone wants to film it and put it up, great. We were just skateboarding with the kids, and then we'll just let them know, hey, we got call your neighbor. She thinks you're causing a bunch of noise, but we don't really care. Maybe just take it on down the street so that you're not right in front of her house. And then we just leave.
Yeah.
And that was the type of community policing, but we weren't trying to film it. And you can definitely tell there's 2 or 3 cameras set up, or as opposed to some shaky cell phone footage,
Right. Yep. And that's one of the things that I was trying to do. But like you said, as when you do these podcasts and stuff, like you're I don't want to call it, mine wasn't rebranding necessarily. I understand what you're saying for yours, but mine was like, oh, here's a new idea. Let me try this idea. Cause
that's awesome.
to be honest, the podcast itself, it was slow growing. It was, I didn't plan. The idea wasn't to be famous. The idea was to use what I was doing towards my dissertation when I do go for a doctorate. That was the
Which
idea.
makes sense, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to continue the thesis into a dissertation and use that for my doctorate to show like, hey, education is the way to go. And you have to be, objective and show both sides. And this is a way that police departments can start bridging and creating a better community. And then in that, I did the whiskey idea, right? One night I'm just watching the body cam. Well, that fucking blew up. That was like, everybody loved that. And it kind of hurt my feelings because I was like, the podcast is the idea. This was just a fun thing to do for the night. Well, everybody kept requesting it because I got to talk and they got to be a part of it. So that became the second part. And then I was like, how do I get people to notice us? And I started doing my research in shorts, YouTube shorts and reels on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. That was the way that people were drawing attention and getting quick, I don't want to say quick notoriety in a way. So
Yeah.
I started,
we're learning that part.
Yeah.
We've been terrible at that part of it.
So I wanted to create, I had sometimes I think I'm funny. So I was like, I'm going to try to do some humorous stuff and try to do that. And then I'm also going to do educational stuff. Like if I see a video and something that I can be like, okay, like people keep saying, oh, the cop can't make you get out of the car. Well, technically he can. Pennsylvania versus Mims, Maryland v. Wilson. Pennsylvania versus Mims is a Supreme Court case hearing that allows us to get the driver out. Maryland v. Wilson is what allows us to get all the passengers out. And it's in and out. It's quick. And then people, you get the trolls fact checking like, no, they gotta suspect that there's a danger and da da da. I'm like, well, they haven't ruled on that part yet. Like, so until then, this is the loophole that we're using, is that, hey, you want to roll your window up. Now you've created a safety issue for me. I need you to step out of the car. And we have the right to do that. And this is the court case that backs it up. So there's the education part. We can debate back and forth, but you know how that is. The debate causes engagement. Engagement causes growth and reach. And so now I have the 3 tiers to my podcast stuff. And, got 300,000 people following. I just, it just has grown simply because of the reels and the shorts. So if you guys want help with that, let me know. I'll teach you everything I know. And that goes for any other law enforcement person, military people. I'm an educator by heart. I love to teach this stuff. And I have I've spent probably 40, 50 grand of my own money over the last 4 years doing this. I would say about half of that has been wasted because I bought shit I didn't need and it didn't work out for me, I'm like, fuck. So you wasted a lot of money doing this, but I've also spent some good money doing what I'm doing.
They're definitely labors of love, right? That's the bottom line. Like we're not doing this to get rich or famous. You know what? So the first hit that I got, the first high I got out of it was an email. I think 6 or 9 months in, we got an email from a woman who said, my husband's been a cop and a sergeant for 15 years and our marriage was suffering and I didn't know how to talk to him. And I listened to your show a couple of times and you helped give me insight into what he's going through and the stuff he wouldn't talk to me about. And I was able to approach him better about it and get him to open up to me a little bit. And I was like, holy shit, wait, what? Yeah. So that kind of gave me the, because I'm not a cop anymore. I'm retired, but I still have that heart for service. I still want to be, I want to contribute to the community. So this was our way of doing it.
Yeah. My episode with Bruce Anderson was one of my best outreach, where I had a cop from Washington, the state, and a cop from DC. So I traveled the nation with this one episode, where he had talked about his officer involved shooting and the fallout, PTSD stuff. And, he's almost going through a divorce and whatnot. Right. And by the end, his whole message was like, it's okay to not be okay. And this is what I'm going through. And like, when he did the episode, he was a sergeant. When this happened to him, he was an officer. So when we talked about it, I was like, you good to talk about your shooting and all that stuff? And he's like, yeah, man, I'm way past it. He literally had a PTSD flashback moment during it, broke down. So it was very eye-opening for law enforcement to see, other law enforcement guys to see like, holy shit, like this is still affecting him. He thought he was past it and all of that. But I got an email from both sides of the nation of one said, hey, we showed this clip in our roll call to help our guys. Oh, wow. And the other guy said, hey, you helped me finally get on meds. Like this episode helped me get on medication. So could you please reach out to Bruce and let him know I really appreciate him opening up. So just like you said, Tom, like that's the crack. That's what makes you addicted to what you're doing. It looks like Tom's froze, by the way.
I know.
He is. His face is frozen. But yeah, getting those emails and you're talking about it. A lot of them come from shootings. It's very interesting, but a lot of them come from shootings. And when, you're dealing with someone who struggled, like an officer who struggled through a shooting, and then you have another officer who writes in and is basically like, that was my story. And I'm so glad to hear that I'm not alone and that there are other people out there that are going through the exact same thing that I am. And I just want to say thank you for helping me through it. And this really helped. And then you're like, hey, that's awesome. And this is what we do it for and why we do it. And it's so special when you actually get that back. You get that feedback.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. It's I think it helps, especially too, as podcast hosts, as us, in being able to speak the language and draw that out of them. Like that's the skill set behind it. And I think that's one of the things that will make you successful. And to what Tom was saying, we're not doing it to be famous. That's not the idea. But my idea is if it's working, I want to get out to as many people as I can because I hope my
Absolutely.
guests will help them. And that is
Yeah.
really the ultimate goal, is to try to get my guests to help somebody out there. I'm just a conduit. I'm just the one that knows the nerd side of it. So let me use the nerd side to help get your message out there. And
Right.
it's why I'm such a big, like, I'm kind of a stickler. I tell people, hey, if you're going to be on my podcast, you got to have an external mic because I want the sound quality to be, it's got to be worth your time. I want your message to get out there. If the sound's
Right.
bad, nobody's going to listen. And that's
Right.
just the way it is. If you come across and they're like, "Well, I got my cell phone and I got my earbuds." I'm like, "No, it's not. It's not gonna fly." Um,
Yeah.
so, I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm just saying, like, I've done this long enough now, and I've seen the numbers. Like,
Mhm.
people tune out as soon as you sound terrible. The
Yeah.
video, the video is like it hit or miss. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Um, it's is what it is. But as long as your audio is working, he said it won't unfreeze. Just land the plane.
Yeah. So as we're getting ready to close out this episode, what do you have as a message for those people who are listening that, might be early on in law enforcement, or they're going through it, or they're towards the end of their career?
Okay, so we'll go with the early people first. Early guys, one, I've said this before on some other podcasts, grappling. Please take that more serious than any other training that's out there. Get your grappling under control. You should be doing it prior to becoming a cop, and you should continue it as you are a police officer on your own. If you have to go to a local gym that teaches good stuff. Now, I am a little biased. I do favor Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but catch wrestling, wrestling,
Mhm.
Muay Thai, judo, boxing, all of these are acceptable things in my opinion for the streets. But I think grappling or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is probably the best one, and there's the most thing for law enforcement out there. Because if you want to use the least amount of use of force, know the most amount of use of force. You cannot take 40 hours of this. You can't take 6 weeks of it and think you're going to be proficient the rest of your career. It is a perishable skill, and you have to keep doing it. Also, learn how to freaking write. Some of you guys come out here and you write your new reports as new officers, and you think you're, the next great writer, and you're terrible. You need to learn how to type it or write in description. And like we said, the more you learn to narrate your own life in patrol on your body cam, the better your report writing will become. So learn
Yeah.
that. If you're at the end of your career, remember,
Hey.
hey, Tom's back.
There you go.
If you're at the end of your career, remember that law enforcement is something you do. It's not who you are.
Right.
So as you're about to exit, find out who you are. If you haven't figured that out yet, have a plan when you're
Right.
getting out, have hobbies, have a second job if you want,
Mhm. Yeah.
whatever it is, but have ideas. Do not become stagnant, because one of the number one killers of retirement is complacency.
Yep.
And just sitting by. Stay busy. My dad retired after 30 years. He's a national competitor in judo and jiu-jitsu. He
Nice.
does woodworking, and the man is a fishing junkie. So he is constantly staying busy.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
with that, that's my advice to those guys, at the beginning and the end. And for those in the middle of it, law enforcement is what you make it, man. If you're
Yeah.
not having fun, it's on you. Take
Yeah.
some time off, do whatever you got to do, but you need to reignite your own passion. If you're not familiar with emotional intelligence, I think that's one of the most important skills that we can learn. I know it sounds, hippy dippy, but when you truly understand what emotional intelligence is, I'll give you a quick example. You know, you, your wife says some passing comment and it instantly makes you mad. If you're able to pause yourself and figure out why did I let myself get mad about that comment? Now you're starting to use emotional intelligence. It's not about other people, it's about you and being able to read why things trigger you. And once you realize, oh, I control this brain. I control what makes me mad. And that makes you a better cop. It prevents burnout.
Mhm.
And it's the way to start looking at knowing how to talk to people. And obviously, I think new officers need to know that too. But our middle of the ground officers, our 5-year and higher guys, they're the ones that are the most susceptible to sticking their foot in their mouth.
Yeah.
And
For sure.
we get in that level where we're like, oh, I already know how to do all these calls. I know how to do all the paperwork.
The ego.
Yeah, and then the next thing you know, you're like, yeah, I ain't got time for this call. Where's the rookie? Why isn't he taking this call? Like,
Yeah,
I'm
you get
above this.
salty real fucking
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah, yeah.
Or you
I'm a
don't
glass
explain
half
anything to
full
the
guy.
family. Yeah.
I
It's
could tell
very
you,
rare.
our
Yeah.
academy coordinator called it the Condo and Redondo speech, and Redondo is a really nice beach area of LA, and he said, have an eye. He says, for me, it was buying a condo in Redondo Beach when I retired and just running on the beach and playing beach volleyball and all that stuff. And he said, whatever it is, whatever that thing is for you, have that condo in Redondo in mind. Have the goal, because don't make this your entire life. And
Yeah.
to tag up on your emotional intelligence thing, I want to share this. I've talked about this a little bit. I don't think I've ever shared it, but as I was going through retirement, it was a brand new chief to the department. And so he didn't know me from Adam, but he knew, clearly, like, is a difficult thing to go through. And unfortunately, he gave this book to me at the end of my career. But this is Emotional
Yeah.
Survival for Law Enforcement by Kevin
Yep.
Gilmartin. And if you are wherever you are in your career, whether you're at the beginning, middle, or the end, go get this book and read it. It's not very thick. It's maybe, a quarter-inch thick. It's practically a pamphlet. You will swear that Kevin Gilmartin was in your home spying on you and your family and your wife because of the shit that he writes about. And you go, oh my God, that's me.
Mm.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
me. And you will be so convicted by internal things that it brings up that you realize, oh, and if you're not, then you need to get out of the game, period.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Anyway,
I've tried to tell some other officers, I'm like, I'm a unicorn in police work. One, I'm always optimistic. I'm also a glass half full guy, and I've been with the same girl since 7th grade.
yeah.
So that's through the military and police work.
Congrats, man. That's
And one of the reasons being is I had a dad that was in law enforcement, and I saw all of these alcoholic divorced cops.
Yes.
And I just kind of naturally was like, I got to do the opposite of whatever they're doing.
Mhm.
And so one of the opposite things about that was I tell my wife everything. Like if I
Yeah.
had a rough call, I'm like, hey, I had a bad call. Like, and she'll say, well, tell me about it. I'm like, you want full detail or you want, and she'll always, she's
Yeah.
never been like, I'm like, it was dead kid, this, that, the other, whatever. And I've always had an outlet. I've always used her. I've never tried to shield her from what I experienced because it's a marriage, it's a partnership. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of cops, we think we have to, again, secret squirrel that stuff. I can talk about it with my boys, but I'm going to protect her. I'm going to protect my family from hearing about that stuff. No, I don't do
It's
that.
not protecting him.
Nope.
It's
Nope.
not.
It's
And
it's hurting you.
your car partner should not know more about you than your life partner.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. So
anyway.
yeah, that's the other side. I know it's kind of a loaded thing that Chuck was asking me about.
No, it's awesome.
Yeah. So I was trying to get all that out there.
I love it. You're preaching to the choir because we say a lot of that same stuff here. And I'll say, I really enjoyed having you on the show. We'd love to have you come back anytime you want. We'd love to we do debriefs sometimes of videos. So maybe we'll pick something that's out there and we'll all get together and we'll talk shit about it.
Cool. And I'll get you guys on mine, obviously.
Sure. Awesome.
now that I'm rocking and rolling again.
Happy to. And then we always give our guests a chance to dedicate their episode to anyone they would like. And so you have your own dedication, please.
Yeah. So we had a fallen officer, Billy Randolph. He was killed by a drunk driver. He's a sergeant and he was working the streets, trying to help his guys on the freeway, and put himself in what I would consider a position that it was one of the most protect. He was on the exit ramp, up on the exit ramp off of the freeway, and a drunk driver went the wrong way down the exit ramp.
Dang.
Never even seen it coming. But he is one of those sergeants that when he spoke, the leadership listened and the troops revered, which is rare. And he was on his 30th year. It was his retirement year. And I think he stayed on because he just loved the troops, loved training and teaching.
Damn it.
Always had, the same speech every end of his roll call, have fun, do good police work, be safe. It was something to that effect. But and I live by that, just a good guy. So, you know, I hate to see him go. We know how this job can go. He went out with his boots on. So, much respect to that. But yeah, I'd like to dedicate it to Billy and just, if you guys get a second, if you're a God-fearing man or whoever it is you believe in or whatever, just tell Billy what's up, man. Appreciate your sacrifice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, rest easy, brother. We got it from here.
Yes, sir.
So, well, again, I really appreciate you coming on, Chuck. And I know we kind of put this together last minute, but we're 20 minutes over. This is going to be a long one for us.
Oh, I'm a talker. My podcast usually goes 2.5, 3 hours.
I can,
So we'll usually drink. So,
so it's a little early for that for me.
Yeah, it is me too. That's why I'm drinking the energy.
You know what? We should have Eric on Locker Room too. We got our followers asked us to do 2 a week. They were like, we don't need any more. And I'm like, well, it's really hard to book guests twice a week and get the scheduling, which is a pain in the ass. So if we did something else, what would we do? And they said, just talk about current events. So we do a live show every Wednesday night. Sometimes like last night, it was on Thursday just for scheduling, but we'll just discuss what's going on in pop culture and kind of give that like law enforcement / military, but everyman perspective on, some of that stuff, because we're all from different backgrounds. Well, so we'll have to have Eric on to have some drinks and tell some.
Yeah. And Eric, where can they find you?
Awesome. So the website's being worked on. My cousin he's a nerd. He does all that stuff, but twocopsonedonut.com. That's where you can find us all spelled out. But I am on everything. Spotify, app. If you're just a listener, if you just want to listen, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, those are like the 3 big ones, but we're on all the other little ones. And then if you want to catch our videos and stuff, we're on YouTube and Rumble, kind of on Rumble. We're trying to transfer a lot of our stuff over to there just in case YouTube shuts us down. And then I'm on all the social medias, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, real big on LinkedIn right now. I love it.
Are you really?
Yeah.
You're like the only one.
Yeah. All the sponsors and stuff that I get are from LinkedIn.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
When we get done,
I have
guys,
another platform I have to use.
When we get done, I'm on Clapper, which is my TikTok backup.
We did Rumble. We just did Truth. We're like where we realize we have to be on everything, and we don't want to be. But that's our producer is telling us, you guys need, like, he was like, TikTok, and I said, yeah, we have one, and he goes, do you use it? And I said, no. He got us like from like 100 people to 1,200 people in a week. Just
nice,
like, doing nothing other than maintaining it. Chuck and I are like, we just want to talk.
I know. I just want to have the fun.
I got the Instagram up like 10,000 followers, and I was like, cool.
Yeah. But you start making those reels, it just takes one video. I went from like 2,000 to 125,000. So
we'll keep doing it. It's working. So I'm glad people know where to find you. They can do, again, it's 2 Cops, 1 Donut on everything. I think, if my wife can find it, anybody can find it. Let me tell you.
Yes. Yeah. It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy, guys. I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun, guys.
Yeah, me too.
We'll have you back. I just want to say thank you, Eric, for coming on. Thank you for the listeners. Thank you for the support. If you already follow us, please like and share a post. You can go to our Instagram at @war_stories_official and our Facebook at War Story Podcast. If you already follow us there, just like and share the posts. You can also go to our website to support us at www.warstoriesofficial.com. Grab some gear. If you want to be featured on the show, you want to be a guest, go to booking.warstories@gmail.com. Again, that is booking.warstories@gmail.com. And I can get you booked. We're always looking for law enforcement, corrections, dispatchers, fire, medics, and veterans. But also, if you're an ER doc, we would love to hear from you. You guys have some crazy stories. And if you have a friend you think would be a great fit, let them know about the podcast. Give them the booking email and link us up, and we get them booked.
Yeah, and I'm working on rescheduling our Air Force flight surgeon, who is now a back specialist, pain management specialist. She was, chopping up people in KC-135s, and now she's, working on people's backs and stuff like that. And let me tell you, if you're a cop, you know how important it is to have a good back doctor.
Get your outer vest carrier going, man.
Yeah, damn right. Oh, finally, people are starting to get onto that, right? Finally starting.
Yeah, dude.
So, all right. Well, thank you again. And until our next episode, come home with your shield or on it.